want to welcome you all today to our program that is being sponsored by the Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim Christian Understanding. We're very excited about having this program on peace building and women's rights in Nigeria, its current challenges and responses. And in addition to our participants, I'm especially grateful to the moderator, Dr. Rosalind Hackett. Professor Hackett is Chancellor's Professor Emerita and Professor of Religious Studies Emerita at the University of Tennessee. She's also Extraordinary Professor at the Desmond Tutu Center for Religion and Social Justice, University of the West Cape, South Africa. She has taught and conducted research at the universities of Abadan, Calabar, Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, and has been a visiting fellow at Harvard, University of Cape Town, and other universities. Dr. Hackett writes on the area and writes on indigenous religions, new religious movements, gender, art, human rights, and conflict in Africa. She's an amazing scholar. She's past president and honorary life member of the International Association for the History of Religions. She currently serves on the board and the program committee of the African Consortium of Law and Religion Studies. And she's a member of ACMCU's Academic Council. So I'll turn that over to you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Esposito. My name is Rosalind Hackett, and I am serving as today's moderator. I'd like to say that today's webinar on peace building and women's rights in Nigeria fits the bill, the goals of ACMCU extremely well, not just because of the timely topic, but mainly due to the experience and expertise of our two speakers, Dr. Abiola Akiyode Afolabi and Ms. Khadija Hawaja Gambo. Like the effective feminist activists that they are, they work at the grassroots level, moving in regional, national, and international circles as required. They are here to share with us why and how women's rights and peace-building initiatives matter in Nigeria today more than ever, and yet are frequently overlooked, especially in prominent interreligious initiatives. As a scholar of religion, I am happy to say that both speakers are very attentive to the salience of religion and culture in the affirming or limiting of women's rights. Now, the speaker bios will be eventually posted in the chat box, but let me at least give you the key information. Dr. Abiola Akiyode Afolabi holds a PhD from the University of London in gender and humanitarian law. She is a human rights attorney and development expert, as well as senior lecturer at the Faculty of Law, University of Lagos. Her work in Nigeria has contributed to the development of laws and policies in the northeast of Nigeria, despite the decade-long insurgency in the area. She's currently the chairperson of the West African Network for Peace, WANEP, acting secretary of the West African Center for Law and Religion Studies, WARCLAS, a member of the board of the African Consortium for Law and Religion Studies, ACLAS. She has also written extensively on democracy, women's human rights, political participation, peace and security in Africa. She also coordinates the Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, WARDEC, a leading women and girls' rights group in West Africa. Turning to our second presenter, Khadija Hawaja Gambo holds a BA and MA in Islamic Studies from the University of Jos in Nigeria. She's a certified mediator and is currently a permanent commissioner with the Kaduna State Peace Commission. She leads all community engagements relating to peace dialogues and mediation, interest-based negotiation, and hosts other peace processes in Kaduna and neighboring states. From 2012 to 2016, she served as political and gender advisor for the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue. From 2017 to 2019, she was a consultant on preventing radicalization and extremism leading to terrorism at the Cairo International Center for Conflict Resolution, Peacekeeping, and Peacebuilding. She was a countering violent extremism consultant for the Presidential Committee on Northeast Initiative, Nigeria. Khadija is also an active member of Mothers School, a Vienna-based INGO working with women across the globe to prevent and counter violent extremism. She is also a member of the Outcome Group for the King Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz International Center for Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue and the International Fellows Program there. I am proud to call Abiola and Khadija not just my wonderful colleagues, but my friends. And I'm grateful to all who worked to make today's event possible. While most of you are connected via Zoom, I am happy to share with you that I'm part of a live audience here at the Desmond Tutu Center for Religion and Social Justice at the University of the Western Cape in Cape Town, South Africa. Following this webinar, we will have our own debriefing and discussion session. Now, a quick note on the format for today. In addition to hearing from each speaker about their work, we want them to engage each other on the challenges they face in being advocates for peace and the rights of girls and women in contemporary Nigeria, especially in conflict zones. We did circulate some 3 questions, and these will be, you may see these posted in the chat. These are kind of structuring questions, but we also want to have a spirit of engagement and leave plenty of time for Q&A as well. Please post your questions or comments in the Q&A. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to begin with Abiola. I'm going to refer to them by their first names, if you don't mind, because it's more comfortable for us and because it's probably faster that way. So Abiola, tell our audience about the sort of work you do and some of the highs and lows of your advocacy on behalf of women and girls.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to commend the Georgetown University for this project, and also my dear sister, Rosalind. Rosalind, you didn't tell them that you're a chief from Nigeria. You know, we normally respect our chief. So Chief, I greet you. Thank you very much. Well, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, WADC, was founded in the year 2000, and it came as a result of what we saw coming, particularly with respect to the rights of women and girls. In 1999, a particular young lady called Safia was to be stoned to death because she was accused of committing adultery. And because of that, it led to like a huge campaign across the country. And I was there in the US doing an internship after my LLM. And I sat there and I asked myself a question. Do I want to remain in New York and women's rights will be violated in Nigeria? Did I not study law to be able to support women and girls in the country? I told the people who employed me that it's time to go. And interestingly, we started a campaign which was led then by Baba for Women's Human Rights, which was called Safia Must Not Die. And so that was how WOTC was created. So the discussion around religion, discussion around peace building become one of the two major issues that the organization has been focusing on. So when we started off, we had the first office in Kaduna State, where Aja Gambo is from, number 19 Park Street. That was where we had our first office because we're interested in engaging in conversation around religion. And we convened the first meeting that was looking at Sharia and women's human rights, inviting ulamas and other groups, to participate. Yes, I recognize that Baba for Women's Human Rights, rapper, also have been doing a lot of work before we came in. But on the Safia case, we had convened, a meeting in that regard, and that led to about 3 or 4 pieces of resources, for people to study on the issue of religion in Nigeria and how that affects women's human rights, and also help in terms of broadening our knowledge. So our work in peace building is dated to the onset of the organization. And so when the conflict started in northeastern Nigeria with insurgency, we didn't think twice because we knew that we had to engage, in that process. And I want to say proudly that we had contributed as Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center to the creation of paralegal community, across the Northeast, across the Northwest Nigeria. We had also contributed to the passage of Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law as part of a way of ensuring that the rights of women and girls are affirmed. So those are the context upon which we work, and I will allow my sister to introduce, then I can come back. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone from Nigeria. I don't know, it's morning, apparently somewhere. Just in addition to what my sister Abiola has said, I think the context isn't quite different, just that probably for me, I come from the northern part of the country where there's predominantly, you could say predominantly, we have ethnic communities that are more Muslims and with minority Christians in the north. And so the context is such that when I was growing up as a Muslim and as someone from the north, I grew up to find a culture of where it is accepted that even when you violate a woman, it's no news to violate a woman, and so women, we grew up believing, making to believe that we were made to believe that you were just half a human being. So even the life of a woman isn't as important as that of a man. And also a lot of culture that disallow women to be empowered through education, to speak up or to speak out when they are not happy. And forced marriage was very much prevalent in our society. So I think it started with when I started learning and I read Islam, when I started reading Islam, and I was so interested in understanding whether some of all of these stereotypes and prejudices against women were actually religious. And so the interest was more to find out for myself rather than just sit back and allow men to continue to tell me what it is that God wants and what is it that God doesn't want. And so when I began my study of Islam, so it was to find out precisely what is it that God says and what is it that men are saying. And so I came to the understanding that there's so much misinterpretation, misrepresentation, and sometimes even manipulation of texts to suit the whims and caprices of the men that we live around. And so that was the beginning of my journey towards self-emancipation, and as well as also emancipating other fellow women. So it wasn't like, of course, that it wasn't an easy task to begin to speak out and say, no, 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 no. I disagree with such translation. Probably sometimes even argue that the translation are more textual than contextual. And so that was the beginning of how I started to talk about issues that have to do with women and to where I am today. So again, unfortunately, 30 years down the line, the northern part of the country started experiencing what we call intercommunal clashes, you know, around ethnicity, around religion, and all of that. And like I said, the northern part of the country is predominantly Muslim, but we have also quite a sizable number of Christians that could compete with the number of Muslims that we have in the north. And so any confrontation on the basis of religion predisposes all of the people belonging to the two communities to danger. And so killing started and a lot of destructions were happening. But then when I stood back, I realized that those who carry the brunt of the madness of our religion were mostly women, because it's either they are directly victims or indirectly affected, because if you kill men, of course, it could be their husbands, it could be their children. So whichever way, women were seriously affected. And when you go to IDPs, because what we have today in Nigeria is that a lot of, in many states of the country, we have internally displaced persons, and you find that 80 to 85% of those who are displaced are women, and so with children. And so it also now drew my attention to not only speaking, in terms of trying to redirect the focus of women to understanding religion, but that I should do something in terms of, bringing together the different communities that reside in the north to understand that we have every reason to coexist together, even though we differ in belief and ideology. And so that was how my work again changed, or I changed gear from speaking just for women to speaking for peace. And so I met with a lot of difficulties. I will never pretend that it was easy, because to speak on religious matters where I come from is something that you dare not do as a woman, because it is regarded as exclusively, a kind of, men became very, very territorial about religious issues. And so that was one problem that I had to deal with. And then secondly, again, this belief that only men fight. And so because only men fight, so only men should sit to discuss issues of peace. And there you come again, Khadija, complicating the matter the more, trying to talk about peace, and even saying that, no, you have to be there, and that women have right to be part of the discussions, of dialogue, of mediation, and of also taking decisions and even signing agreements of peace. So I think in a nutshell, that's how complicated my life became, because I have delved so much into issues that were hitherto regarded as exclusively men's business. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Khadija. That's there's a lot that I'm sure we'd like to know more about. I want to just ask, as an academic, a concerned academic, did your academic degrees, right, from the University of Jos, a very reputable university, did those help or hinder you in your community work or in your efforts to develop a voice for justice for women?
Yes, I wouldn't say that my passing through the university and all of that had hindered my work in any way. I think it validated, what I was doing, because I think it legitimized why I can speak on religious issues. It also legitimized why I should also speak on issues of peace and peaceful coexistence amongst the adherents of different faiths. And so I wasn't disadvantaged by that. So it made a lot of people to reserve whatever they wanted to say by saying, well, she's not talking out of ignorance. So I think it was quite good for me. Probably if I hadn't read Islam to that level, a lot would have silenced me by saying you're only talking out of ignorance. So for me, it was a plus.
Right, thank you. Abiola, can you say something about your legal training? I mean, could you have done all that you've done without those law degrees and qualifications? I mean, yes, tell us something about, your main tool of advocacy. You're mute.
Well, I believe that the law degree is a good contribution to whatever I'm doing today, but it's not entirely. I'm in law, but I'm also at war with law, because I believe that the law oftentimes also it's not a good tool for development and good governance. So my studying law was not to study law the way the law is, but to see whether we can change the law to become a tool for people's development and growth. So my being in the university to read law was not just what I was doing in the university. So the university became a space for influence for me and a space for representation, a space to challenge the law that are not positive, that are not impactful on people's lives. And we have quite a number of that. In Kaduna State, not until recently, the penal code says, section 55, you can beat your wife. What law is that? What's the law? So there are some part of the laws that I am at war with. So being a lawyer also helped me to interrogate that and to contribute to the change and reforms of some of those laws that are not acceptable, to us. And of course, we know that the religious laws are also there. And so that also was an issue. So we had to negotiate, and I use the word negotiate sparingly, to negotiate some of the text of some of the laws, with people who are scholars in Islam, who are scholars in Christianity, to be able to also accept that women have a right, to live. She's an expert in Islamic law, but let me just explain one or two things. For example, the law of evidence under Islamic law, makes a woman a third class, in terms of giving evidence and what have you. So we have even the law talking about adultery, did not just put the whole conversation on adultery on the woman, not asking, so who impregnated the woman, or, asking about it. So you can see a lot of patriarchy in both religion. And I want to say that both religions are very external to Africa. We all know that. And of course, religion has been used severally as an instrument of female oppression. And so our work is also to see how we ensure that women also live life free, and see religion as an internal and an external thing. I want to raise particularly what is happening in Iran currently. which has led, the women's movement has gone, to war in Iran, to support what they stand for and what they believe in. So, and that's the kind of thing that we see. So it's not only in Iran. What is happening in Iran is happening in Nigeria on daily basis. Of recent, Deborah was stoned and burnt, in a country where there is law and order. So these are some of the issues that we have to deal with. So working in those environments where there's a lot of extremism, where there's a lot of fundamentalism, makes our work very difficult. You have to be conscious of your environment. You have to be conscious of your language. You have to be conscious of a whole lot of things to be able to negotiate some women's human rights. And I use the word negotiate, because it has gotten to a level where, it is no longer an affirmation, but, you have to negotiate, given the fact that patriarchy is a system, there's a superstructure, there's always an element in the room that is always ready to roll back and push back women's rights.
Right. So Khadija, want to reply to that? It's
Abiola has raised so many interesting questions to the extent that she has interrogated quite a number of things, and I wish to throw more light on that. Some I agree with her, and some I differ respectfully. To begin with, let me, I think, start with the issue of extremism and the kind of extremism we see around in the country, where religion has become a tool that people use to just kill arbitrarily and nothing happens. It's really very unfortunate. And it goes to tell you that, again, if you say there's a law in the land, I may disagree with you. Because if there's law in the land, I don't think people will be behaving the way they're behaving. You just wake up, and just because somebody says something that is not pleasing to you, you just kill that person and nothing happens. So I think it is because, it could be because people have lost hope in our judiciary, the system, or because there's so much impunity. That's why everybody does what he wants. So on the issue of extremism, and I think lately I was speaking in one event, and I said that unless and until the government of Nigeria rise up to the occasion of becoming deliberate as to make sure that those who speak about religion have the right and they're certified to talk about religion, we will see worse of these things, happening in the country. We live in a country where everybody now talks about Islam and everybody talks about Christianity. And so it has even become a business. And so in some of these churches and mosques that are managed by these entrepreneurs, what you see is the kind of hate that we see now in the public, where if someone speaks ill about something that some people hold divine, I think what is expected ideally as a religious person is to try to enlighten or to answer, to respond to some of the questions raised by whoever, rather than just making it into an issue that you just kill. So Islam, for example, since we're talking about Islam, is a religion that respects life, and is a religion also that will wish that everybody accept it and goes to heaven. So why do we have to quickly send people to hell just because they made one mistake or the other? So I think that is where the role of those certified religious leaders will come, where they need to talk about Islam the more and tell people that a non-Muslim speaking against Islam does not warrant killing of the person. Rather, you need to dialogue, you need to talk, you need to discuss. And so that's where the role of people who know Islam need to come. So, and this extremism, my sister, is not just restricted to Muslims, is in the churches, is in the mosque, even African traditional, the traditionalists are becoming. So taking life in Nigeria is something that you could do over a cup of coffee, and which is very, very unfortunate. Now, again, some of the laws which you have raised, it goes also to speak about contextual translation of texts. What we are having these days, and to be specific about Islam, is that we have people who do not have capacity, who do not have, because I have always argued that for somebody to be a scholar of not just Islam, of anything, you need to have not just the knowledge, but understanding and wisdom. And so when you are lacking in understanding, all you know is that you can read the text, you've memorized the text, and you know what it means, but you are not able to understand, like what the Christian will say, the hermeneutics of the Bible. You don't know the context. And so you just know that, okay, this is what it says. You don't even know the implication. Then the tendency is that people will be dogmatic, people will be fanatical about things that they shouldn't be. And so that's why, again, the patriarchy here comes in, because men dominate the place. So they give no room to admit any alternative for women. For example, the issue of adultery. I mean, even a mad person knows that a woman cannot commit adultery without a man. Even a mad person, I think it requires no further argument to establish that if a woman is pregnant, some man somewhere must have pregnanted her. So to suggest that she should, be subjected to all kinds of penalties without the man, I think it's unfair to the women. And so when Islam talks about adultery, and I also want to believe about Christianity, when Christianity speaks about adultery, I think it's an address to the man and the woman. And so all of this reinterpretation, I think, need to happen so that we understand what is for God and what is for man. So I wouldn't want to bother us with a lot of discussions on this, but I will tell you that I think a lot has to be done. When Rosalind was talking about some of the work I did in Cairo, she talked about the training I was conducting in Cairo on preventing radicalization and extremism leading to terrorism. And what was it that we discovered, and why were we doing that? The purpose was, we realized that in many mosques and churches, now I'm being specific because it's just for the Muslims, we realize that a lot of people think that they know while they don't know. And so most of the interpretations that we have out there today, which support violence, are actually interpretations that were taken out of what we call the consensus-based translation of the text of the Quran. And so what we are doing now is trying to bring scholars, imams of mosques back to understand how religious texts were translated, and that what is happening now is really taking it out of context. And so by so doing, we believe that we'll be able to curb the menace of extremism and radicalization leading to terrorism in the world in the name of religion.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think you're both making an excellent case for education and not taking things out of context and the significance of interpretation. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk more about how you've been involved in capacity building at the local, the community levels, because you can't be everywhere, but so how are you training women or men to perhaps to intervene in conflict or as part of education? So, and at the community level, or perhaps at the state level. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to hear from Khadija about what she does as a peace commissioner at Kaduna State. Kaduna State being sort of renowned for the conflict that has occurred there, but also some of the peace and reconciliation efforts. So Abiola, let's Could you say something about the grassroots level and why this matters? And is this not where women can excel in terms of whether it's, you know, informal peace building? Could you say something about that? And, you know, why,
Well,
you know, I see you nodding, but this is so frequently not talked about, not on the radar screen. So can you say something about activism, advocacy at the local level?
well, generally, just I think candidate has mentioned that the Northeast might be a place, or the North might be a place where there's more conflict, but there's conflict everywhere, you know, across the country. And I could recall that the Niger Delta had quite a number of that. And in the last decade, there were more conversation around the Niger Delta until 2009, when the conversation shifted to the northern part of Nigeria. In all these communities, women have been drawn as agencies, you know, working to ensure that there is peace. I can recall that in 2003, we had worked with the Uborodo women in Delta states, in the Niger Delta, who had suffered a lot of exploitation by the Chevron's Shell, whose water had turned to petrol and all of that. And on a particular day, we worked with the women, and they peacefully hijacked or entered one of the boats that normally take the Shell people to their different tongue. And for 11 days, the women held the Chevron to discussions about how to better the lives of their own and their children. And we did a book called The 11-Day Siege, which was a peaceful protest, you know, by women, but they were demanding, you know, for change in their community. It became a great history. The women in Iborodo today were able to get a lot of things for their communities: schools, maternal health clinic, and quite a number of things for them, and their situation had gotten better. So in the Niger Delta, we have worked in that regard. In the whole of Southwest, and up till now, we have a community response team. We have a group of paralegal who are trained on conflict resolution, peace building. And during COVID-19, they all came out to support women and their communities in terms of ensuring that the emergency does not degenerate, you know, to breakdown of law and order. And so across the country, we have about 861 communities where we work, and where we work with local community groups who were paralegals. We're in Yobe, we're in Adamawa, we're in Bauchi, we're in Maiduguri, and as I'm speaking today, what's the team, they're actually in Maiduguri, you know, running a program on costed model action plan. So the community is very important because Nigeria is grassrooted. Nigeria is very grassrooted. So the bulk of the population, they live in the community. The bulk of the population who suffer the pangs of oppression in this country, they live in the community. So the community then becomes a place where agencies can be built to restructure and transform the country. And that's why building a community structure becomes very important, to be able to intervene and also ensure that there is peace, you know, in the community. So we have record of several women in those places who are leading a lot of peaceful intervention and peace building, and who are also, as a chair of WANEP, I'm also aware that the West African Network for Peace in Nigeria chapter has done a whole lot of work across the whole states in Nigeria. Currently, they are running a bigger project that is talking about early warning sign, you know, and they're training women through the Witness project on how to respond to even to religious issues, extremism, radicalization, and what have you. So women have been very active participants. I will talk about the National Action Plan and how the government have not been very responsive in terms of responding to the contribution that women have made at those community level. The indigenous knowledge of women have not been taken into consideration. That is why the conflict has remained as part of our system.
Right. Khadija, again, I see you nodding your head as Abiola was speaking. Yes, tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, I think before I became a permanent commissioner in the Kaduna State Peace Commission, of course, I was in Plateau State, a neighboring state to Kaduna, where we're also there experiencing similar problem like Kaduna State, still the intercommunal clashes, and also the new one that came some years back, which is the farmer header, conflict. And so I realized that, like I said, in all of the violent conflict that happened, when you look at the casualties, oftentimes they are women. And even if they are not women, like I said, they are related to women. And so, in Africa and precisely in Nigeria, there's this assumption, I'm sorry to say assumption, that the man is the breadwinner. And so, when you lose the breadwinner, I said assumption because in reality, what is happening now is the reverse. Quite a number of women now are the breadwinners. They feed the men, the husbands, and even the children. But then again, this protectiveness of the men, the husband, so to say. So when you lose a man, the husband, when you lose youth, boys, you lose your children. So women are affected, and quite a number of Nigerian women, I'm telling you, are traumatized. And so beyond insisting that they need to be on the table to discuss peace, I think the government needs to be deliberate in coming up with a project that will address the trauma that women are passing through because of the incessant violence that is happening, not just in the north, but in the whole of the country. And so sometimes when psychologists say, even speaking about your problems sometimes take away some of the pains. But you realize that in most communities, the women dare not talk. It is even believed that women should have more shock absorbers as to absorb pain, that it's a shame for a woman to complain about pain. It's a shame for a woman to speak out about her problems. And so I think in our work and in what Abiola is doing, we're trying to say no, that we are as human as men, that we have feelings, that we feel pain, sometimes even worse than what the men feel, and that we have right to express ourselves. And so we are creating spaces, not just a space, for women to at least begin to ventilate, to speak about their experiences, and to also make recommendations as to what they think will bring peace in their communities. So yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. I want to connect to your final point about the role of the media. Can you say something about the pluses and minuses of whether it's broadcast media or social media? To what extent are women taking advantage of the availability of being able to speak out and share messages, or is there a side of the media that continues to perpetuate the exclusion or the marginality of women? So say something from your own experiences. What do you feel about the use of modern media, and how much do you personally use modern media, right? So Abiola, why don't you, I know you both are kind of active social media users, so it'll be good for you to share that and the benefits of it. Don't forget to unmute, please.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Okay, let me first raise some contextual issues so that we can also put some of the conversation in context. When I started, I talked about the two religion being external. So there's a role that colonialism had played in the whole process. So we talk about feminist decolonization, and the idea of feminist decolonization is also to begin to look at what has been the impact of, our heritage being attached, to either British colony or, in what we see that happens in the country currently. And I think that if you look at the whole of Sahel, so it's not only about Maiduguri, up until Niger, so there's conflict everywhere. And of course, the conflict also has its own background, which could be related to economy, and other things. And of course, women then it becomes very transactional. And then women then become those who suffer from all this. And you see this manifest in different ways. So either culture or tradition, or religion. So you see that coming. So it's important for us to understand that context, that just mere changing the text or mere speaking with, women and, empowering them may not necessarily solve the bigger picture. So it's important for us to get that we continue to struggle with this until when we address that superstructure that is affecting everyone. And having said that, so on the issue of the media, I think there's been a lot of challenge on the civic space in Nigeria, particularly the media. We have had a lot of media shutdown. It might not be directly related to religion, but we have also seen situation where some media organization this day had like a problem, when it was related to a story on religion. And what we must also understand is that when such happens, it also affects the psyche of the media generally. So people become much more careful in terms of what story they bring to the public, in terms of what they think can be discussed in the public. So, but for women, I think that there's been a lot of women, particularly young women, in the social media, that have actually contributed a lot to discussions around women's human rights. But I still feel that there are still quite a huge number of women who are not compliant with the social media. So there's generally shrinking civic space, and the media has a big role to play. But I don't think that role has been done effectively or efficiently to promote women's human rights. I'm aware that there's a group of women called Report Women, which is a group that was established by Wole Soyinka Center for investigative journalism. And this group of women are doing a lot of stories, to bring up issues of women in religion, sexual and gender-based violence, and a whole lot of other things. I think we need more of that, to be able to change some of the narratives that we are seeing today.
Excellent, thank you. Khadija, the media.
Well, as someone who works in conflict, communities that are have been ridden, by conflict, I think my perception about the media could be sometimes is positive and sometimes negative. But so I would say that media has a very strategic position in promoting peace, as well as also promoting violence. So depending on what exactly they use it for. And for the women taking advantage of or leveraging on the existing platforms and media to speak out, and that's why I say the northern part of the country is still behind in so many things. For example, quite a number of our women do want to engage, do want to write, do want to express themselves, but there's so much stereotype and biases against women who use social media, for example. I remember on many occasions, I see them, some people here preaching that no responsible woman should come to the social media. No responsible Muslim woman, for example, should display her picture. You must be loose and uncultured to be very active on that, and all of that. And so sometimes that scare away quite a number of, especially the young and unmarried ladies, because they will always threaten the boys that how can I marry a woman who is always on social media? But for some of us who have passed that age of being threatened, we're 24/7 on social media, depending on whether we want to write or not. So I will say, by and large, I think there's significant progress because women are breaking away from all of those cultural and structural biases against them, and patriarchy, which makes it easy for men to do as they wish, and very, very difficult, or if not impossible, for women to be. So significant progress, yes, but we need to do more and more of that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So let's shift gears again to taking some of the several questions that have appeared as you've been speaking. And I think Olushola Babalola's commented about women being confined to passive roles and in community rehabilitation, reconciliation. I think you've almost answered that. What can we do to change this narrative? I mean, obviously there's not a single way, and I think both of our speakers sort of embody the complexity and the multitasking that is required. Now, I'm going to go to Kehinde Olayode. This is a legal question. In addition, is the tripartite legal framework operating in Nigeria not a big obstacle in achieving social justice, especially for our women? Has religion itself not become a tool for elite manipulation for political gains, thereby exacerbating religious crises for political gains? Who would like to take that on?
Well, okay. If you permit, it has been really challenging as someone who works in communities to, trying to resolve one conflict or the other. What I have always and continuously noticed is that each time we go to communities to conduct, to facilitate dialogues, and we ask for 20 or 30 or 60 persons to appear, they come without women. And so the question I will always ask in a humorous way, without offending their sensibility, will be that, have your women left? They must have fled. The community will say, no, they're at home. I say, so why are you not bringing them? Are they not affected by the conflict? So it is what we see always. We're still seeing that. And so we need to all the time insist that we must speak to women. But sometimes we face a lot of resistance. And so we run parallel dialogue sessions where we put the women and then we put them in and we hear the perspective of the women. And then I remember in one of the dialogue sessions that I was one of those who facilitated in Plateau, some communities, of course, 2 communities precisely, refused that there were women would never attend. And so what we did was to do that kind of a thing. But what we did at the end of it, because they were supposed to sign an agreement not to resort to violence, no matter what happens. The women wrote their agreement, the men wrote their agreement. But at the end of it, we had to do what we call diplomacy. We did shuttle diplomacy. And so we beckoned on the men to allow the women to read their own recommendations. And they were fascinated because the recommendation of the women were more actionable. They speak to the issues. There were no sentiments, and the men were so ashamed of themselves. But even at that, what they said was, okay, let the women's agreement and recommendation be an addendum to their own agreement. We said, okay, what is important, it is in one document, and so people will get to read. So we see quite a lot of that. But like I said, we are not relenting. We keep insisting. And I must commend Kaduna State. I see a serious departure and a paradigm shift as far as inclusion is concerned, in the aspect of governance, in the aspect of so many things. I think women are not left behind. So, but I would say that we need more and more of that. But I think the present administration is doing a lot in empowering women to really be in offices, and not just an office, but high-level discussions are happening with women.
All right. So let's go to another. Thank you. Abiola, did you want to comment?
Yes. Well, on the issue of tripartite system of law, that's a major challenge, because at times where you live or where you are married to might also determine the kind of law that will regulate your life. So the customary law is there, the Sharia law is there, English law is there. So all these at times come together to define the lives of women. And and of course, given the level of education of people in country, yeah, it becomes very difficult to be able to know whether it's talak that will regulate the life. And looking at someone like me, I'm a Christian, I'm married to a Muslim. So whether it's talak, they will use to send me out, or they will need to go and file a divorce suit, in the court. So those are the kind of complications that we have, especially looking at our diversity as a country, where we have seen several intermarriages, Christian marrying Muslims and Muslim marrying Christians, and all of a sudden we are bringing religion to be the defining factor, for what we do. So those are the kind of contradiction that such tripartite system of law, has brought into our system.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, let's go to another question. So an anonymous attendee is asking about, it says, for those who reside within states where the basis for legal reasoning is rooted in the strict adherence of religious text, how best can persons typically subject to scrutiny and marginalization in these regions voice concerns without putting themselves at risk? I guess that's something to do with, where do people go in terms of reporting and support? Yes, just quick answers to that so we can get some more. We've got about 15 minutes left, but there are other questions and I want to also give you time to wrap up. Yes, who would like to answer that?
I think Khadija should.
As to where should someone go to report?
Yes, especially if somebody who's at risk, either individuals or communities at risk. How is there, have channels been opened up for sort of safe reporting, or or are there external mechanisms such as at the level of the state, Kaduna State? Could someone come along and report safely on fears about growing radicalization in their community?
Well, there are various ways of reporting and, I mean, different channels of reporting. But I would say that something that has to do with that, because the Kaduna State Peace Commission essentially was established to take care of some of the concerns of citizens, especially when it has to do with fear of threats. And so we are equipped to take care of, I mean, to receive such complaints so as to take preventive measures so that we don't just allow things to happen before we react. So we have what we have our situation room, which we call the CWA, and we have people there experts who sit in the situation room, and what they do is they receive information from individuals, groups, and communities. And then we have analysts who sit to analyze whether it's really a threat and verification and all of that. And in that place, we have a representative from the police. We have also from the vigilance service, and quite a number of people who are responders, like we said. But again, in terms of security also, the police essentially is the first point of call to report anything that has to do with such. But again, I'm a Nigerian, and Abiola will not differ if I say that one has to be very, very careful in terms of even the reporting, because you may not know who you're reporting to. And I think there are lots that needs to be done to take care of confidentiality as far as our security agencies are concerned, so that one's life is not jeopardized because you have come to report to those who you should report to. So I think that's what we are, the discussion that is ongoing, that there's need for overhauling of our security agencies to fish out the criminals amongst them, who sometimes are even informants to the criminals, and could even help in perpetuating some of the violence that we see around. So one has to be very careful. And a caveat, just a caveat, I'm saying, be careful who you report to. Make sure that you have confidence in whoever you are reporting to.
Thank you. Abiola, any comments on that response?
Well, for me, I think that there's a serious system failure. And that's also further heightening insecurity for people. So what we then see is more of community structures that people can rely on. And that's why you see that in some part of the country, there is a call for a different security system entirely, whether it's Amotekun, whether it's there's another group in the southeast, that are coming up because people had lost hope in the either policing system or the security system. But I think that the community structure is still stronger. People still believe in whether it's the community development committee, because when you tell people see something and say something and they don't know who to go and say something to, then it becomes like a challenge, So the community structure then becomes overburdened, with a lot of things. And it's overburdened because when they receive, such information, they don't know what to do with the information. So what then happens is that the information still remain in there. And that's why we say that the reason why insecurity is heightened in the country is also the fact that we have thrown away the ability of people who are, which one would call the indigenous knowledge. The whole conversation about the security is not looking at those local knowledge that people know that something might happen in their environment and where it's likely going to come from and what they need to do it. And I think we need to open up on that so that we can address some of the communal or community crisis that we are having in the country.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I had that as a point that we should address. Can I go back to Khadija on that? I mean, are there ways in which traditional leaders or cultural, political leaders, or kind of local traditional religious experts are incorporated or included in some way in the many efforts that you are making to build peace and social cohesion?
Yeah, I think when we came in, we realized that the first thing to do was to do what we call stakeholder mapping. And because we realized that unless we do conflict analysis, it will be very difficult to resolve anything. And so part of it was to, the strategy was to do stakeholder analysis. And who are these stakeholders? Key, you may call them, or relevant stakeholders. And I think they are as follows. The traditional institution, we took them also as key stakeholders. We also look at community development associations. We also took the leadership as part of the stakeholders. We also look at women groups, and then youth also, and then religious leaders, because whether we like it or not, most of the conflicts that we have around are sometimes engineered by the kind of inflammatory statements or sermons that we received from churches or mosques. And so we realize that unless we bring them to the table, it will be very difficult to check some of these excesses. And so these are our stakeholders. And so back to the traditional institutions, we realize, like Abiola said, that due to the, I think our judiciary is overburdened by the cases, if they are to attend to the cases that we have in the country. I don't think they have the manpower and the time will not be sufficient. So what we are looking at with the level of criminality in the country, we are asking and discussing and also suggesting that why not we also come with an alternative, which is the alternative dispute resolution, the issue of this like Ubuntu, and so that some of these crimes that were committed in the name of communal clashes could be addressed there, so that people will have a sense of justice done to them and coming their way. So we're actually working closely with traditional rulers, and sometimes where necessary, like matters of land matters, issues of farmer header, issues of conflict between a community and community, we sometimes allow the traditional leadership to take care of that and only give them sometimes technical support where they are lacking. And so that's why we also give them capacity. We build their capacity to be able to address some of these communal disputes.
Yeah, thank you, Khadija. Yes, there's a question about support you get or work you do with fellow West African states. Are there ways in which you collaborate and cooperate on women's issues?
Okay, maybe I'll take that since I'm introduced as the chair of West African Network for Peace. WANEP works in the entire 12, West African countries, and there's a lot of collaboration going on with Nigeria doing quite a lot, and also learning a lot from Liberia, Sierra Leone. If you recall, during the conflict in Sierra Leone and Liberia, the women played very leading roles in ensuring that peace came back, into the country. And that's also one of the background why we had the first female president, in that country post conflicts in Liberia. And of course, our record is there for all of us to see as one of the most peaceful president that they ever had in that country. So there's a lot of work between learning and peer learning going on the side of West Africa Peace Network. If you also recall, there is a UN Security Council resolution 1325, which was signed in 2000. So Nigeria has, through the work of WANEP, Nigeria has domesticated that. And so we have the national action plans in Nigeria, which is responding to a lot of issues related to women. And so we have the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law as one of the outcome of the National Action Plan, but there is still a lot that we need to do. There is a lot of trauma that women are going through in conflict zones. There are a lot of violence. Women have been raped. Women have been abused during conflicts at different places, whether it's religious conflicts, whether it's the ethnic conflicts in Modakeke. There are widows. Widows have been disinherited. They have been disempowered, for offenses that they know nothing about. So there is a need to really have a public hearing to be able to understand the extent to which, Nigerian women have suffered from the different and multiple conflicts. Conflict from the home, conflict from outside the home, conflict from the government. So at different levels that women have suffered different conflicts. So there is a need, to deal with this in a very holistic manner, that we'll be able to. Until when we do that, it might be very difficult to get the women back alive. Yeah.
Thank you, Abiola. Khadija, anything on that?
Yes, I have never known Abiola, but I'm, should I say, I'm not really a member of WANEP, but I have done quite a number of things for WANEP, including facilitating some of the peer group learning, and I've gone there severally. I have participated in training for them. So should I say that I'm a loyalist or I'm a member? I don't know what I am. So I know so much about it.
I remember, don't worry.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier when I said women are traumatized, including some of us who are doing the work. Imagine when you put yourself out there with all of the risk involved and you just want to help. And then oftentimes what you meet is a lot of attack, sometimes not really physically, but psychologically and sometimes even emotionally. So you have to deal with a lot of downgrading comments and all of that about you being a woman doing that work. So I have told people that the trauma is not just for the victims, but even those of us who are working to support people need some psychosocial therapy to deal with all of the issues that that we meet on daily basis. And so women to be heard. Women need to be heard. And that takes us to the
carers, yes. And yeah, thank you very much. That's a great point. Now we've got just a couple of minutes left, and I would like to just ask you to very quickly, in a sentence or two, express what's the next step, the next hope for you, something about your future plans. And then also someone has asked, where can we find and read more from you? So if you could just quickly say, that if somebody wants to read what you've written or what you've spoken on or the resources that you developed, can you drop those into the chat or say them? But I think that's an important request. And then I've got a quote from one of the questioners that I'm going to read out, which I think will be a great note to end on. So very quickly, future plans, Abiola.
Well, we're working across the country, and one of the things we are demanding for is that we must put our mouth where our money, where our mouth is. As a first step, there's a need for the government to invest a lot of money in women, in getting their lives back. So we're demanding for action plan that is costed, that it's for like 3 or 4 years on how to deal with all the issues affecting women, whether in the Northeast, whether in the Southwest. So that's one of the projects that we're running in the 36 states, demanding for resources.
Thank you. And where to find your output?
Well, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, it's www.cnig.org.
All right, thank you. Khadija, what does the future hold for you in terms of your plans, your aspirations?
I think it's, I just wish to say this. I don't know how it would sound, but the aspiration is to continue to remain as an unrepentant advocate of women's rights, and also advocate for a world free of violence, where all humans can coexist with their differences without any fear of molestation or violence against them. A world where men and women can coexist together and relate with love and respect. So this is the kind of work I intend to continue to do. So I'm an unrepentant in that aspect. So for me, I don't think I've been very lazy. I haven't written anything, or I've written some things. But I think I'm more in the field. Like I said, I'm not like Abiola, who is busy writing, but I know there's a lot of requests from people that I need to write my memo, and some of the things, my findings, need to be written down by myself so that others will learn from what, and I have taken it as a challenge that I will commence that as soon as to begin to jot some of my life experience. Perhaps it might help some people. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Before I go to the final comment, there was one question that I think we should just address very quickly, and that should be, have you been helped or hindered by your work or the interventions of international organizations? And I suppose that would also mean organizations and governments. So in a nutshell, I mean, is this like the media, some pluses and some minuses, or would you say that you couldn't have done all that you've done if you didn't have international connections and support?
I think for me personally, I started off this work with ING. So I think the experiences that I bring to bear in the work I do came from that, and also the resilience that I have gotten in, and that I have developed against all of the verbal traits. I think due to the fact that I have been exposed to doing a lot of work outside the shores of this country called Nigeria. And so I think international community or ING has helped in shaping even my perception about inclusion and all of that. And so again, working for government also broadened my understanding that when I was outside, my perception about government was purely on hearsay. And so now that I work for government, I have the ability also to see and understand, and sometimes even reason as to why certain things happen or why certain things don't work. So I think both ways they have helped me in my work.
Thank you. And quickly, Abiola, you've got had a lot when you're out of your country right now. I mean, can you? But you know, do Western interventions or partnerships, are they generally beneficial for you in your work?
There's been a lot of collaboration. There's been a lot of alliance building with people from across the world. So there's been contribution from the Western world. There's also been contribution from Africa, even from Nigeria itself. to the work that we do. And I think all these pieces of contribution are very important. They are critical. Our value is the most important. We can only get funds from on what we believe in. So we don't compromise our value because of funding or because of any other thing. And so that's a passion that drives the job.
All right, thank you. Well, we really should end now. We have many more questions than we had time for, but I'm sure the speakers will want to read every one. But I'd like to end with this wonderful comment from Mama Kay, Mrs. Kemi Akiyode, and I can't read the rest of the name, sorry, but she says, firstly, I would like to commend and appreciate our two amazing and powerful sisters for their courage, boldness, dedication, positively impacting lives, promoting social harmony, selfless service to humanity, and more. Very well done. I salute you both. But her question is, despite all the challenges, barriers, risks, red tapes in your area of work, what motivates you to keep going? So I think the speakers have conveyed what drives them, what equips them, what motivates them. So it just remains for me to thank the Al-Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding for hosting this event, and to our two wonderful speakers for sharing, as I hoped, from the grassroots and further afield, giving us insights and greater understanding of the shall we say, the plight of women and girls in present day Nigeria, but also all the important work that you and your organizations and networks are doing. And please let us know if we can help in any way. So thanks to all who attended. We can't see you, can't hear you, but we do have an audience here, and I would like them to show their appreciation for the speakers this evening.
I wanted to say something to Rosalind, just one quick one. I never told you, but you were my motivation. When I met you in 2001, when I saw you and I listened to you talk, I said to myself, I may never be like her, but let me try to emulate her. So you were one of my motivations. And thank God, after 21 years again, here I am sitting before you and trying to, probably attempting to impress you, that at least you motivated me to be where I am. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, everyone, and good night from South Africa.
Thank you for a wonderful program.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Take care.
Bye-bye.